All right, Nate, let's switch our attention over to the AFC West and you have to focus on the two-time defending national or Super Bowl champions, rather, the Kansas City Chiefs. Their win total is set at 11 and a half. They're huge favorites to win the division. We don't even need to say it. They're plus 300 to win the AFC and plus 550 to win the Super Bowl. I'd take that all on Bally Bet. We all know how good the Chiefs are. Are they going to win their third straight Super Bowl?
Yeah, I can't say they're not going to win the Super Bowl because last year was supposed to be their down year, and they still won the Super Bowl for
Yeah.
the second straight year. It was kind of an odd team though in the regular season because it was the offense just wasn't the same with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. It was probably their worst offense. I mean, it's a high bar because the Chiefs' offense has been so
Yeah.
good since
Yeah.
Mahomes has been the starter, but in terms of their team was constructed, it just wasn't. Really inspiring offense until maybe the playoffs. But even the playoffs, they get out to nice starts with the script, but then in the second half, it wasn't always the prettiest. The thing that stepped up for them, or the unit that stepped up, was Steve Spagnuolo's defense. It was a really strong unit for Kansas City, and I think it makes this team really scary this year because I'm expecting this offense to get back on track. And even though if the defense takes a little bit of a step, it's you don't need an amazing defense to pair with this offense. So I'm not looking to sell the Chiefs at all, even after winning the Super Bowl and maybe some questions how motivated they will be in some of the regular season games, and also have questions about all the teams in their division. So I think you can count on the Chiefs to make their seventh straight AFC title game. We saw the previous five at Arrowhead, and then last year they finally went on the road and beat Baltimore before winning the Super Bowl. So I'm just going to pencil in the Chiefs to win or go to the AFC title game just because that's one of the most consistent things in the NFL that we've seen over the last handful of years.
All right, and a very interesting team this season is going to be the Los Angeles Chargers. The win total is set at 8.5. They're plus 350 to win the AFC West and plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. It's a new era for the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh and those khakis on the NFL sidelines once again. Is Harbaugh going to lead LA to a winning season?
Yeah, it's an interesting team, and I've always had a soft spot for the Chargers ever since I started betting because it's just
Hmm.
like the talent's always there, and then they just find ways to let you down. But if like they found ways to win games, then they could do big things. And I know they had a couple good
Hmm.
seasons, maybe in the last 10 years, where they had a lot of success, but lately hasn't been good. And the Brandon Staley tenure kind of stamped that. So now you bring in Jim Harbaugh, kind of a new face of the organization, a new style of football that he's going to bring in. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is a coach that wherever he's gone, collegiately or the NFL, he's usually won right away. He won right away at Stanford, turned around a program that was really poor way before Stanford was a little bit more relevant. He went to the 49ers, and that wasn't a good situation, and he took them to success right away. And then in Michigan, he did have early success, and then it kind of dipped a little bit, but then he ended strong in Ann Arbor at his alma mater. So, I mean, Harbaugh, you can't doubt him in terms of being a winner. But in terms of the roster, I do have a lot of questions. They have Justin Herbert, who's this great quarterback. Has a great arm, and we've seen it on display since he's taken over as the starting quarterback in his rookie year. But all their offseason moves indicate that they're going to be a run heavy team. I mean, you bring in Greg Roman, who is the offensive coordinator for Jim Harbaugh when he was with the 49ers, and also the OC for the Ravens for a while when they kind of emphasized the run of Lamar Jackson. And then you have question marks with Justin Herbert, and he had the foot injury, and he missed some time in training camp, didn't play in preseason, and he's back at practice, and he's going to play week one. At least he's in line to, but I just don't know what he's going to look like because of the injury and a very new offense. And for me, the Chargers are always a team. If they're at home and they're a favorite, I always look to avoid them or bet against them because they have no home field advantage at all. They basically play 17 road games, but when they're an underdog on the road, they're already used to playing in a road environment in their own building, as sad as that is. So usually you outperform odds makers' expectations. So there might be some individual games where I bet on and against the Chargers. I do kind of like them in week one because I'm down on the Raiders, even though they're at home and a favorite. So because I do think they're going to at least win week one, that's what's holding me back of taking an under at 8.5 on the Charger, and also the fact that Jim Harbaugh is a very competent coach, or at least knows how to win football games.
Yeah. All right, talking about the Raiders, let's go over to Sin City and talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. Their win total is set at 6.5. They're plus 1,200 to win the AFC West, 100 to 1 odds to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. The Raiders promoted interim head coach Antonio Pierce to their actual head coaching position this season. I know you're low on the Raiders, but why is that the case?
Well, first, I'll be a little positive, and I'll say that Antonio Pierce did a great job coming in after Josh McDaniels was fired. McDaniels
Yep.
clearly was unpopular in the locker room. Pierce comes in, the whole mood of the team is better, and they actually start winning games. And most importantly, I think what you could take into this year is Antonio Pierce did a great job fixing that defense that really struggled in the first half of the year. But when he took over, it was, I think, the best scoring defense in the NFL. But part of the reason why that scoring defense was so good is they played a slew of backup quarterbacks when Pierce became the head coach. There was also just a lot of luck involved where they were winning, really close games, and they were just super fortunate all season, or at least in the second half of the season, with how they won some of those games. So I'm expecting regression in terms of luck. But what really has me down on the Raiders is just their offensive setup, where you have Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, who I was not a fan of when he was the OC of the Chicago Bears. And then Gardner Minshew is the starting quarterback, who I know he has a cool mustache and he's kind of a guy that's easy to root for. But in terms of on field production, it isn't pretty for Minshew as a starting quarterback. He's a serviceable backup, but as a starting quarterback, that's not a guy I want going into week one if you're an NFL team. So that is offensive, that duo. Then like they're going to want to run the ball because Pierce is a former linebacker and he wants to protect his defense. But if you look at the Raiders' offensive personnel with Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers at wide receiver, you draft Brock Bowers with your first pick. Those are all pass catchers. So it's kind of like a team that where there's a lot of good players or a lot of talented players offensively, but they're probably going to be misused and have a quarterback that's very underwhelming. So under on the Raiders at 6.5 is my favorite bet in terms of regular season win total for the NFL going into this season. This team's a complete sell for me.
Sure. Let's take it up to the Mile High Stadium and go over to the Denver Broncos. Their win total set at 5.5 plus 1,800 to win the AFC West, 150 to 1 odds to win the Super Bowl, all courtesy of Bally Bet. Sean Payton and the Broncos had a really ugly breakup with Russell Wilson and used their first round pick on Bo Nix from Oregon. Is the Payton Nix combo good enough for the Broncos to get over a pretty low number of 5.5?
I think it could be just because Sean Payton is still a good coach in my opinion, and Bo Nix is 24 years old, so he should be like maybe his ceiling is lower than some rookies, but he should have a pretty high floor, and he's not like developing or having growing pains. I mean, had 60 starts in college football, so this isn't like some sort of project. So he might be good enough for them to like at least win some games this year or cover some numbers. But I think his upside is definitely capped, and for a team that probably should have been thinking in the future, I'm not sure if I understand that draft pick that Payton made, but I think he wants to prove that Russell Wilson was the problem and that he's still a good coach. So that's a statement that he's made. My issue with the Broncos and why I'm not really bullish on them is they're just kind of the roster itself. I think it's a poor roster, especially defensively. And I think we're now seeing the full effects of that Russell Wilson trade where they traded so many draft picks and now you just lose depth pieces and players that could have developed into starters because you traded all that draft capital for Russell Wilson and then paid him a ton of money, and now you have him for like $37 million of dead cap hit. So because of the dead cap and just the poor trade that really is going to see the consequences over the next few years, I have a hard time betting on the Broncos. I could see myself going up or picking them in individual games, especially as an underdog, because I do think Payton can get the most out of Bo Nix, who should be more polished quarterbacks than some rookies. But I don't know. I'm not in any rush to bet over or under at 5.5 on Denver.
All right, Nate, maybe the easiest question I'm going to ask you in this entire NFL segment we're doing. Who's going to win the AFC West?
Yeah, it's gonna be the Kansas City Chiefs. This is very easy for me. The easiest of the division winners. You see it in the price at about minus 300. Yeah, just a lot to like of Kansas City, and I think they can even be better than last year in the regular season, just because or the quarter or the offense in general is just going to be better with what they have. Wide receiver and just kind of Patrick Mahomes just being the absolute best player in the NFL. And even if the defense does take a step back, it's still a unit that proved last year you could win with them. So pretty easy here with Kansas City. I think the Chargers maybe could flirt with a playoff spot, but other than that, I think this is a division where only one team will make the postseason.